thank you for listening to the Drums and Rums podcast. If you'd like to help support the podcast and our content on YouTube, become a Drums and Rums Patreon member, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel as we work to get towards 1,000 subscribers. Links are listed in the description of this episode. And thanks again for checking out this episode and all of our other past episodes. Hey all, welcome to the Drums and Rums podcast. I'm your host, Paul Robertson. So again, we've got a live stream podcast here tonight. So we are going to enjoy this. You're going to like this podcast. We're going to get into here, and I'm going to introduce our guest here in a moment here. First, just want to do a quick few housekeeping for our video viewers here. But first, let me go ahead and do the intro, and then I'll get that housekeeping out of the way. So again, thanks for tuning in. So I connected with our guest because of Rum. And of course, this is Drums and Rums, right? And actually Rock Sound Rum. And Rock Sound Rum, you've probably, if you follow us, you know, we've posted a lot about our good friends over Rock Sound. We've talked about the daiquiri, the large daiquiri record that we attended last year. Our guest and I is in an Instagram group with Rock Sound Rum, and it's made up of bartenders, content creators, people that enjoy spirits and cocktails. And that's how I met our guest, and we've been following each other for quite a while now. And so let me introduce our guest to the podcast here, bartender and podcaster also, and also a drummer. So this is cool. We've got not only, you know, we've got rum, we do have drums, and we have podcasting. So we're hitting all the bases here. I think we just hit a grand slam here. So let me welcome to the show. Go, hey Anthony, how you doing, man?
Hey Paul, how's it going?
Good. Finally, you know, I know, like I said, it's amazing how many people that we all know because of social media, and that's pretty much about the limit of it, right?
Yeah, it just, you know, finally we get you have to sort through all those people, and then finally you get to meet that one particular person.
That's I know, and you know, and it's great when you meet somebody, you make friends, and it's all because of booze.
Yeah.
So just real quick before we jump into this, we got a lot to cover here. So again, I was mentioning, this podcast is being taped. The live stream today is January 18th, and the audio podcast is released January 24th. So you get a sneak peek with the video version here. And so if you're viewing with us today, don't forget also to go ahead and listen to the podcast over at Apple, Spotify, Pandora, and other podcast apps. And again, thank you for joining us here tonight for this episode. And then don't forget to watch the podcast, other podcasts that we have out there on YouTube. Again, quick housekeeping. We'll take a few questions here. We'll take a little break at 30 and 60 minutes marks, and then you just put in the chat there question in caps just so I can see your question. I don't miss it. I know we got a lot of questions to ask Anthony. I know he's probably got a lot of stories. All bartenders have stories, right? So and especially living in Texas there, and we're gonna get in here. So again, yeah, let's get right to it, Anthony. So bartending. No. Let's start first. Let's start because it is Drums and Rums, right? Let's start drums and music. So, how did you get into music? Who introduced you to music?
I have been into music since I was a kid. My father, excellent piano player, listened to a very eclectic music because he grew up in the 60s when music was eclectic. You could listen to one radio station and hear Led Zeppelin, Sam and Dave, Janis Joplin, all in one radio station. And so my dad's musical taste was pretty eclectic, and I kind of adapted that when I was very young. He made sure I knew most of the classics, like whether it was about the Beatles, which is my favorite band of all time, or he made sure I knew about Led Zeppelin, or even Beethoven, Chopin,
Okay.
He made sure that I knew a little bit about everything.
That's because when you mention bands there like Zeppelin and very what we now call classic rock, right? And but then go further back. I always love we have had conversation with other drummers who follow some of the drummer lineage. Is like if a drummer today, and I'd be really surprised if they don't know some of the lineage, but everyone knows Bonham, even non-drummers, right? And they know Bonham, Pert, and so. But then you go a step back, and then maybe you don't like Rush, but you know what? The guy that he was influenced is because of the result of this and because of the result of, I mean, well, look at like Dave Grohl, right? I mean, huge influences that go further back to drummers that people don't even know about.
Right. The drummers that my first when I started playing the drums was in high school because my parents had me playing a whole bunch of instruments growing up. I started out on piano. I played the violin for a little bit and played the trumpet for a little bit. And finally, when I got to high school, my dad came up to me and he said, "Do you want to learn another instrument?" And I thought about it for a few minutes, and I said, "How about guitar?" And my dad, he was always worried about my tempo when playing piano because I'd always speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. And then he said, "How about the drums?" Now, you try to tell, you tell a 14-year-old boy that he can play the drums. You think he's going to say no?
Exactly. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. There's
But,
there's special kind of parents that actually let their kids actually play drums. Right. So.
yeah. But my musical influences back when I first started picking up the sticks were like Billy Joel.
Oh, okay.
And I was listening to rap music. It was 1980 or 1990, about that time.
Okay.
So, gangster rap was hitting the mainstream. So I was playing along with a lot of current R&B rap, Billy Joel. So I think if I went down to it, my first influence was probably Liberty DeVito, who played for
Okay.
Billy Joel.
All right.
And good, solid drummer, hit those things so hard.
That's a name that that's awesome because that's a name I haven't heard before, and to be, Liberty. There's another name that doesn't get recognition. That guy's been in it. He's good. It's like the conversation I had last night with Pete McLaughlin, drummer also, and we were talking about this. Like, I said there's a lot of that. If I wish I learned the to understand to be a musician first, early in my life when playing drums, and band second, I could be having a career, right? And I think that's a lot of things. An important thing is know your craft, learn drums, and you could be, hey, I'm a professional drummer, and that's all I do. So
Yeah. When I first started playing the drums, my first teacher, he asked about my experience with music, and I said, "Well, I've been playing piano for years." And then he basically picked up the syncopation book, tore out the first, half of the book, and says, "Well, we don't have to cover reading quarter notes, eighth notes.
because you know
You
it,
already
right?
know that."
Right. Yeah, right,
And
and a lot of people don't know, right? And I know but is piano is in the percussion family,
yes,
right? Oh,
yeah. I was listening to an interview with Billy Joel just recently where he was like, "Piano is a percussion instrument." He was talking about Angry Young Man, and he said basically that came from this influence from the song Wipeout. The big, that the big drum solo in the beginning of that.
very cool.
And I sat back and I thought about it. Oh yeah, it does make sense. But he was trying to play the drums on the piano, and after sitting back and thinking about it, and I thought, well, that's brilliant.
You're right. Translate it to a different instrument, and it's like, oh, we can do this kind of thing. Yeah, that is brilliant. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. That's some tidbit information.
Yeah.
So
But when it came to first starting out playing the drums, I would honestly say that Liberty DeVito was the first drummer to influence me to learn time, stay in the pocket, and that sort of thing. But as I progressed, as I went farther, I all of a sudden when became a freshman in high school, this guy comes up to me and he says, "Oh, you play the drums?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Try this album." And he hands me Metallica's Injustice for All album. And I know Lars Ulrich gets a lot of crap.
yep,
But
yep.
when I got that album, I had to learn how to play it. I still can't play most of it, but Lars Ulrich became a big influence on me. But I always wish that back in the 90s when I was learning to play the drums the first time, I always wish I had YouTube, because now I'm sitting at YouTube watching
Yep.
Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Karen Carpenter, all do drum solos. I'm like, where were these videos when I
I
was a
know,
kid?
right? I had a very similar mention in recently about I was thinking about it was like I was working totally different, but working on my car and I had to refer to I said Chilton manual, right? YouTube is now the new Chilton's manual, right? And again, or in drumming or music is we had to buy the VHS tapes when it became DVDs and so forth. But I remember there's a lot of those drum tapes you'd have to go and get, and not as
They
easy
cost a
as it is.
fortune.
Yeah, not as easy as today, right? It's simply easier to stop, slow down, do certain things. But yeah, you're right. It's God. There's so much amazing stuff that's out there now to help musicians, really learn and to uh, everybody loves taping themselves, right? So
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great talent I've seen on YouTube, TikTok, that play the drums. And I guarantee if I had all that availability back when I was in high school, I would be stealing from everyone. Oh, I like that beat. Oh, I like the way they did that fill.
so you're talking about the 80s here, late 80s and so forth. So here, let me just give it real quick here a couple comments here from Greg is in the chat there. So he said Beatles your favorite group of all time. We're going to get along well. And he also said his band director would not let anyone take drums unless they previously took piano lessons. So that
Oh, really?
yeah. So that's guy's really pretty interesting. So I consider Buddy Rich the best drummer of all time, and Neil Peart the best percussion of all time. Okay, that's fair enough. So yeah,
Truth being told, now hopefully this doesn't piss off every single person that listens to your show. I like Neil Peart. I respect Neil Peart. But when it came to rock and roll drummers from classic era, even though Neil Peart doesn't go back as far, I've always, ever since the mid to late 90s, I've been trying to adapt to a Keith Moon type of style without the destructiveness and the drugs and all that stuff.
yeah,
But Keith Moon, I kind of discovered, well, it was because of an interview with Richard Starkey, that Keith Moon advised him, when you're playing the drums, play with the guitar, don't play with the bass. And that opened up a lot of stuff for me.
right.
And pissed off a lot of bass players, but the guitar players were like, "Oh, this is fun."
That's what they've been missing out all along. But
Yeah.
they're like Metallica, right? Because Lars and James, they were the main writers and of that, and that's how they mostly played. So, even though when they started out having Cliff Burton, you talk about an amazing bass player and
Oh
still
God,
not
yes.
following him, right? But
Mm.
yeah, that's a perfect example. There is that. Yeah, that's I think I'm tending to be that way too. I probably jam with more guitar players you know than with actual bass players solo, obviously, because it's when you jam, it's hard to jam so just with a bass player because
It
you're just kind
depends on the
of
bass player. Yeah.
yeah. I guess you're just playing some groove stuff and playing but you're not actually I don't know.
I mean, when you're playing with just a person that has the bass player that just plays the backbeat, it does get a little boring.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
gets a little bit more interesting when you're going to bass players like, say, Cliff Burton, Geddy Lee, um John Entwistle.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yep.
though John Entwistle, it always seemed like he was bored on
I
stage, just
know.
doing his own thing, not really doing much.
Making it look so easy.
But but when you're playing with somebody like, say, Les Claypool, I think I would get a headache.
Well, that's why they've got a pretty decent drummer as well, too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So going through there, growing up, and obviously you've been influenced by your dad with the music career and got you into drums. You're talking about the late. I think we're probably roughly about the same age. Probably you said late '80s, '90s. There's still just before rap really exploded on the scene. But again, there's probably I'm sure some of those bands you're listening to was probably like the Beastie Boys. Obviously, that was pretty much more commercial, available for everybody. Things like that.
Actually, I was a bad boy. I was listening to the tapes that my parents didn't want. I had them hidden underneath the music that they approved of, because I was listening to the Beastie Boys. I was listening. I did had the Billy Joel tapes. I had the Bon Jovi, but underneath that, I had like the Ice-T, NWA, and just because that's what was popular at the time.
Right.
And I hadn't really sunk my teeth into rock and roll just yet. And so everybody was listening to gangster rap. So I figured I'll
Right.
listen to it too.
Yeah. Yeah, and at that time, yeah, because there's still a lot. I mean, MTV influenced a lot of people growing up in the '80s. Obviously, what they listen, because that was the only way you can get music or learn about music. And there was no, as we know, there was no internet time. So yeah, that was the Injustice for All. It's funny is that I remember. I think I might have been like just started high school, and I remember the big kick up was that they played the Grammys. They blew everybody away playing a lot, one at the Grammys. The first year
Right.
they had the heavy metal category in the Grammys. And do you remember who beat them out?
Jethro Tull.
That's right. Hey, ding ding. Hold on. Do I have a bell here? No, I don't have the ding ding. But anyway, ding ding. So yeah, and I know everyone got all pissed off because that Jeff the Troll wasn't quite, with a really metal band. But yeah, it's you go back to what you mentioned about Lars. You're right. I don't know. I mean, I get that a lot of people shit on Lars, and I think mostly they get shit on because of the Napster stuff. Yeah, is he? I mean, there's a lot of other drummers that I don't know. Again, once again, like Ringo, he plays the
Yeah.
drums for what the music needs in Metallica. And even listening to some of their newer stuff, I'm just amazed. I'm like, God, these guys are nearly 60 now, and
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
unless they're doing, the drum. If he's doing drum triggers, I mean, I'm not going to go. That's a whole big, I know, a big debate
Yeah.
on drum triggers, right? But I mean, if he's still playing it and he's still double kicking it and he's still playing those things, it's like, wow, that guy is, still got it. It's not easy.
Yeah, even at well, he practices probably more often than I do because you can probably relate to me with this story where when you move out of your parents' place, or before when you're living with your parents, you played the drums as much as you wanted.
Right.
Then you move out of your parents' place into an apartment, and then you have to either try to figure out when the best time of day to play is, or not at all because your neighbors might complain.
Right. Yep.
And so I went through that part for a really long time. And when I finally got my house, I was just like, now it's time to set it up. Now it's time to get back at it. And then 10, 15 minutes later, I realized muscle memory, have none,
Yeah. I know. I sometimes when I've been away from her for a while, and that's how some of it was. The podcast started out of a need for creation. A couple, small little music things I was doing early 2020 just fell apart. It wasn't because of COVID, but I guess ran its course. And again, now it's like, what do I do with my time? And I had this idea, but there's times when I go back to the drums, and after being a while, and it's like very refreshing. But you're right, there's that muscle memory part, but it's also like, wow, okay, I'm not so stuck on certain things, trying to learn things, or just it's very freeing actually.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I my favorite way to practice has always been with a set of headphones and playing along with my favorite music. And the whole technique of it, I mean, learn it helps me get in touch with what Ringo was thinking during Ticket to Ride, or that, not really thinking, but the technique, because who knows what he's thinking. I don't buy into that. What was the musician's thinking when he did this? No, I've never been ask the musician, don't ask me.
yeah, right, yeah,
But the it helps me get in touch with the band a little bit more. And plus, when I was in high school, the band I was playing with, we mostly played cover tunes of that day.
Mm.
Like our first song that we played together in the talent show was Enter Sandman. And three teenage kids realized they just played Enter Sandman from beginning to end. The excitement was just but we went from there to playing Alice in Chains, Tool, Nirvana. I think we mostly played Tool because my bass player wanted to play it, but we were playing a lot of the popular stuff for that day.
Okay.
And that got me in touch with a lot of different drummers, because every once in a while with music, I get a little bit of tunnel vision. And, this guy I can sit and talk about the Beatles for hours, but, I forgot, the Who were a big part of the 60s too,
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what you mentioned in the questionnaire was about the, style of music, which is definitely a very big range there. Is, classic rock, metal, big band. I mean, I know you mentioned, the story there, and then obviously rockabilly, which is like, okay, how does these all fit together? But it's great. And I think it's so important to get out of, to be very open. And I think that is the one benefit of the internet and YouTube and things is, even though you don't buy tapes anymore or CDs, there's a lot more accessibility to different types of music than you probably would have ever been exposed to if you live in BFE, USA, and this is all their local radio stations serving you up. And but yeah, then some of those things carry over, right? Is like, oh wow,
absolutely.
this type of style of music is just maybe this type of music, just faster or slower or whatever, right?
Well, it's like Dave Grohl was talking about in an interview I heard recently. He was talking about the intro for "Smells Like Teen Spirit." He swiped that from a disco song. Just the that he picked that up from a disco song and decided to use that for "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and everybody was like, "Oh my god!" But,
yeah, see,
everybody,
everybody,
you can swipe things from anywhere and add it to your personal technique.
right?
I mean, rockabilly, it's just really high energy, fun. I searched out a lot of rockabilly bands when I used to play music on my podcast. I used to try to get one band to have one song per podcast. And during COVID, for some reason, it became extremely difficult to non-existent. Nobody was answering their emails anymore. But I tried to get a whole bunch of different sounding stuff, but I'd always go check on bandcamp.com. I go check out the rockabilly section and say, what have they got in there now?
The and I know there's and I've talked about this before. I think the study said that I read was like usually by the time you're 27, around that time frame, you've already have locked in your music in for what you're going to stay in generally. And that's fair. And that's fair. There's a lot that I still go back to when I was, the same time period you're talking about. But then there's also I need to force to try listen to something new or different things, or whether it's hip hop or pop stuff or Lady Gaga, right? I mean, yeah, how many? Even though she's a very big metalhead, but when they first came out, nobody like you're listening to Lady. It's like, yeah, but as drummers, I find this a lot too. Is I may not understand, may not relate to the lyrics. I may not understand the lyrics, but again, it's like, hey, I really like the beat, and I like the rhythm, and I like those certain things, and so that's because it all goes back to drums and bass, right?
Right. I totally agree with you. I mean, if I was totally stuck to my guns, I would never pay attention to people like Lady Gaga. I never would have paid attention to Bruno Mars, and he's excellent.
Yeah,
right. I really enjoy his music. But it's just as a musician, you got to kind of immerse yourself into different things, force yourself if you have to, because there's tons of music out there, and truth being told, some of the music of today has kind of turned me off a little bit. I couldn't listen to a lot of it for a long time because I studied audio production for a little while, and I started noticing how much they were using auto tuning, how much they were using copy paste for just one snare hit,
right?
And that started to annoy me.
Pro Tools, right? And I mean that kind of destroyed those kinds of things. Well, we'll fix it in post, and we'll just drag this over, and yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you made the point I was going for. So that worked perfectly. But because I studied audio production, I learned Pro Tools a little bit. But when I started picking out, that verse sounds exactly like the verse before it. or that chorus there. If I put a sound wave generator right next to it, I bet not one frequency would be different. It would be exactly the same.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, where's the humanity in the music? Where's, because maybe it like the Who's See Me, Hear Me, Feel Me on the Tommy album. Everybody knows Roger Daltrey, that first note he hits off key completely, but they kept it in because of studio time. And, we just, just record it, get it on there. And nowadays, I don't think they would have done that. I think they would have done pitch correction or something like that. But it's part of the humanity of the song. So I actually appreciate that.
And, and especially like whether you listen to the music parts that, it's a little off. And some of the old stuff, again, like I said, it was a lot harder to go back and fix things, or you'd have to fully retape or record everything because it was on tape. But yeah, you lose a little bit of that whole organic feel. I mean, I know some people kind of may seem to be coming back a little bit to it because, everything swings in like a pendulum, like where vinyls is making a comeback. People want to listen to vinyl and because there was a better audio quality and nostalgia, I'm sure mostly. But yeah, I've recorded some things and the engineer, he's like Pro Tools, okay, hit this, just hit something, and on that spot where you're hitting, then we'll change the sound on it. And so it's like, what do you need me for, right? Other than to play live. So, but you were talking about the drum setup and what I had envisioned has gotten to a certain point was, I bought a small breakbeat kit for the house and was supposed to play with a smaller set up with a couple of the guys, and then it kind of evolved into buying mesh heads for the drums so I could at least play in the house, and then evolved into, well, if I use the mesh heads, why don't I get drum triggers and then just plug into the brain that I have for my electronic Elisa's kit, and then it's like now I can control the sound and we can make it sound whatever. And so you're still playing drums because it is still that, but yes, am I turning an analog into a digital signal and sound? Yeah. So I think there's there's a trade-off, right?
Yeah. I tried the Ulysses drum kit for a little while, and for some reason I just wasn't happy with the feel of it. I mean, I was excited to be able to change the sounds, to have my coffee table tom instead of just being, setting my Coke on it, to actually be a timpani drum. I was excited about little things like that.
Right.
But when it came to the feel, it wasn't for me. And I keep thinking I'm going to go back out and try a whole bunch of different electric drum kits and because I remember when the first electric drum kit first came out and there were just those rubber rings, the heavy black rubber. And I thought they were awful. It didn't feel like I was playing around it. Yeah. But with the new mesh heads and stuff like that, it's getting close. Yeah. It's getting really good.
Yeah. And those old stuff. Well, it's almost like if you bought the drums for GarageBand or Rock Hero, it was kind of like that, right? There was no rebound coming off of actually playing the stick. Actually, one of our very early guests it was at the Drum Jojo in Nashville. Now I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he learned how to play drums from the drum set on the Rock Band. That's what he told Jim Riley.
Yeah,
he's like, that's the drums I learned, and he was like, well, that's kind of interesting. Again, you play free mode, I guess you can do, and of course that's kind of, the drums are not set up in a certain way, because of you cross and stick for hi-hat. But yeah, it's I don't have a high end Elisa's kit, was something somebody was selling. I was like, well, cool. I convinced my wife and say, oh, look, I can be quiet in the house and so but I did
those Rock Band drums. Interesting. A memory of my niece when she was about 4 years old. They hadn't really gotten her started in music yet, but she sees my dad, my sister, myself, and my brother-in-law. We're all playing Beatles Rock Band, and of course, being 3-4 years old, she's curious. She wants to play it too. So we either turn off the controller or put it in free mode or whatever. And my dad sent me a video of her uh, playing Rock Band with my sister and my brother-in-law. They were playing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and she started hitting the drums, and I'm watching her very closely. I'm like, my God, she's got perfect tempo. And I don't even know if she knows that song, but she's Lucy in the Sky, and I'm like, she's not, playing what's on the music, but who cares about that? She's got great tempo.
Right. It well, hey, it's some of it's born with it, right?
Yeah.
So, who are some of the drummers on YouTube that you watch? That does covers, or like who's some of the YouTube drummers?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I was thinking about that earlier today. Um, let's see, the ones that I've been paying attention to. I haven't actually seen one of her videos in a long time. I don't know if she's still around. Her name was Maytal,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Meytal.
Yep.
She is excellent, and sounded like her career was going way up, and that's when I lost track of her. She joined a band or something like that.
Yeah, it's weird. I'd say she kind of really, yeah, of course, blew up. To help, not to knock her skills, but she's a good looking girl, and so I mean, she got the skills and get the package, and she blew up, had started growing her brand, and then started playing in the band. I remember following, and then yeah, it's all of a sudden kind of disappeared. And there was another drummer at the time. Her name was, or her handle was Lux drummer Lux. Anyway. So she was a female drummer, and I remember watching some of her videos, and she was playing Painkiller in high heels. And
oh dear God!
And she's playing double bass in high heels, and again, there was a lot of it was like, all right, why does everybody make it look so? I mean, again, I know everybody practices, but the right positions on the drums that you're not reaching, overdoing, and so forth. But
yeah.
She had a join, so I'd followed her. I've watched her for a while, and then she joined the band, the Necromancers, Necromantics, and they were thrash and psychobilly and so forth. They came to West Palm. I was like so excited. I'm like, holy cow, she's coming here. I want to go see the band and so forth. And of course, I'm probably like the only person that actually knew who she was just because of following on YouTube. Whereas I was wanting to meet her afterwards, but she disappeared. It's like, okay, whatever, I get it.
But there are a lot of great drummers out there. The girl that family band, the Liliac band, that are on TikTok, I think they were started out as a metal cover band, but I think they're starting to do their own originals now. And but she's really good. There's on Instagram, there's a guy with white hair, mohawk, sunglasses, big, huge drum kit, and he's really good. I don't remember the names of most of these people, right. But when their videos come up on YouTube, I say, okay, I'll check you out for a little bit.
The algorithms are working. Well, have you seen? Damn, I'm gonna mess up his name. Is like Samus666. He's like he does a live stream all the time. I'll have to send you the. He does live stream, and he's got a huge following, and he's playing covers. He's he's pretty entertaining. I'm probably messing his name up. And then there's another guy that everyone's like sending me. It's funny, is like like when you're a certain thing, people like send you all those whenever they see something. Like, oh hey, you're into poodles. Oh hey, and everything poodles.
Yeah.
And there's the one I don't remember his IG screen name. I think he's on YouTube as well. But he's like he's from Europe, maybe Spanish. He may be from Spain, and he plays a lot of stuff one handed. And that's another guy that was like,
I think I've seen him.
And he's insane. I mean, he's playing double bass, and he's doing, like he's got insane, stick control, and yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching him and thinking, I never got my single stroke roll, let alone in one hand, that clean and that fast.
Yeah. So too funny. So, so the drum kit's set up, right? And as you mentioned, you're in the house now, so you got it set up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Going. So I know.
That was when you contacted me, I had that Stranger Things video in my saved videos because I wanted to do that for a really long time, but I had to clean up that room first, and that was taking a lot of time. But when I finally set up my drum kit and then I, put on the Hellfire Club shirt and made that video, that's pretty much where everything goes. I've had that drum kit since I was 16 years old.
Oh wow!
And it's gone from Oregon to Washington, back to Oregon, over to Texas, and it's been around.
I wish I still had my kit. I actually the kit that I had when I was in the same boat, right? Obviously went to high school, moved from playing the drums, high school, moved from New Jersey to Florida, try to acclimate and so forth. Didn't bring them with me, and then trying to establish, and then never quite got back into it. And then eventually, till I moved to South Florida, eventually got my own house, and then got into drums again. And that's because now I own, right? Like I said, this is my house, and now I don't have to answer to anybody. And and so it's funny is because it was again, just let me just get something. Didn't have a lot of money at the time. Just got a forum kit and keep it, just kind of gets back into it. And then at some point, got a Gretsch Catalina kit, sold the forum to a friend. He had it for a while. And then at some point, I can't remember what happened, but anyway, I ended up buying it back from him. So, which is so it came full circle. It's so I still have that kit, and it's over 20-year-old, forum kit and so forth. But yeah, so it's I've got to practice more. The podcast is consuming. I'm doing more of one half of this podcast than I am doing the other half of it, and it's obviously drinking rum. So.
Right. Now, when you were playing the drums, I'm going to ask you a question. When you were playing the drums, I ran into this in the late 90s when I was playing in Seattle, where anybody that saw you with more than snare, bass drum, hi-hat, crash, ride cymbal, if anybody saw you with more than that, they start accusing you of having a Neil Peart complex. Did you ever have that?
I don't remember having or having somebody accused of that. Maybe because I never could afford the whole big setup. I had kind of the opposite when I would meet other musicians, and one, it was you answer the ad. I don't remember what it is now. Before, what's the thing? Anyway, before band mix and things like that. I'd meet another musician, and I had a guy ask me once, "Well, how many cymbals do you have?" I'm like, "What the fuck does that matter?" I'm how many cymbals I have? What do you care? I mean, is there a certain minimum of cymbals that you, as the guitar player, who cares? I mean, how many do you need? Now, again, maybe unless we never got to, maybe if this is where he was going, is this because there's certain songs? Well, hey, let me worry about that. If there's certain songs you want to play that requires, a China or some other type of cymbal, all right, then fine. But again, most of these are just cover bands, and you can cheat enough along the way that if it isn't a certain type of splash or crash or thin, medium crash, and I know for those that are listening and watching that aren't necessarily drummers, yes, it's as drums can be just as crazy as guitar players and pedals and and all those things that they have to use to make different effects. You can
yes.
It can get crazy, how many sets of hi-hats but anyway, so I always thought that was an interesting question, and I always thought who, and again, it's playing, people give respect to those that are playing less because they've got to be more creative playing with less than having a huge drum kit that makes it easier, right? Because there's
Dave Grohl plays with a 3-piece kit and maybe 4 cymbals, maybe. Taylor Hawkins, same thing.
Huge, big old rack tom, right? And then obviously the floors.
Yeah. But Ringo, he played his whole career with the Beatles with just hi-hat and 2 cymbals.
Yeah.
You can't really put Keith Moon in that group because I guess he was in heavy competition with all the drummers, what was his name?
Ginger Baker and things like that.
Ginger Baker.
Yep.
Ginger Baker calls him up one day and says, "Hey, I just added this to my drum kit," and then Keith would run to the store and add 2 more or 3 more just just to be able to say his drum kit's bigger. But there is a competition a little bit,
Right.
between drummers.
That's funny. Yeah, it's always I always have the same thing too. I ask you this a question, is do you ever have the dilemma where you have the drums of the house and people come over and it's not, like you jam, but do you ever have the sense that people feel like your drums are, and you don't even need to ask. It's like an open invitation that people come and they want to get on the drums. They want to split screwing around the drums. But God forbid if you touch a guitar that's hanging on the wall or whatever without asking. Depends on who the person is too, right? But it's like I'll have the drums in my house. It used to be set up right in front of the room. You walk in the living room and it's right there. So it was always usually big open room, and of course people's kids would come over or whatever. It's like, if my kids grabbed your guitar, or touched it or whatever, you'd freak out. But yet you I get very frustrated. That's a big pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, that happened in high school a long time ago. Like when I was playing with my band in high school, that the first time it happened, I'm sitting there watching, as I'm playing the drums, I'm watching the guitar player, I'm watching the bass player, and I'm thinking to myself, I can do that. And so, then we take a break or whatever, and all of a sudden the guitar player decides to start hitting my drums. And then I walk over to his guitar, and he, if he was armed, I'd probably be killed. But I was like, what? You're sitting at my drums.
Right.
And, what's the deal? And, but it was okay to touch my drums, but it's not okay to. I've heard more than one. I think it was Zach Starkey when he did that. Did an Oasis album. He played the drums for one of Oasis's albums, and he said that it became a problem because he didn't know why he was there, because he plays the drums and the drums only, but everybody else plays their instrument and also plays the drums. So, every once in a while somebody would wander over to the drums and play something, and then he's like, why am I here?
Oh, it's too bad. It's kind of like, I'm sure you watched the Get Back documentary, right? Is that last year?
God, yes.
Just seeing how they were all. I mean, they were all amazing musicians on their own right. So again, whether it was Paul or somebody else jumping on the drums and kind of doing their thing, they all can play every instrument, which is why they were so brilliant. But
I remember I have seen tons of footage of that, and how kind of cockeyed even George Martin got when Ringo started playing the piano, showing them Octopus's Garden, and everybody's like, what?
That's a bizarre. I know, it's just the name of the song. It's just, and the song, just listening to the lyrics is it's bizarre. I saw him this past fall with the All-Star Band, and that was a great show. Yeah. So
I've always wanted to see that.
Yeah, Greg Bissonette he was playing drums, and it was cool because Ringo would get up. I mean, the whole All-Star Band would all play their own songs, which is cool because you got to hear Steve Luther play Rosanna and Toto, or Africa, and that, and then Edgar Winter was playing Frankenstein. So it was a really cool evening, just watching these musicians play. And then Bissonette, he doesn't sing, he doesn't have his own stuff, but he did his little drum solo stuff where he was playing different drum licks, so which was kind of cool. Whether it was Hot for Teacher or whether it was other stuff that people knew the drum parts. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of cool, especially for a drummer. It's obviously cool. But yeah, it was a good show.
That's kind of how I when I was playing the drums in high school, for winter performance or spring performance or something like that with the school, they asked me to do a drum solo somewhere in there just because I was playing the drums for everything else. So they decided to give me a little bit of a spotlight. And when it came to making up a drum solo, I was like, okay, I can do this technique, I can do this technique. I'm bored. So I started splicing together a whole bunch of songs, of drum parts that I like the intro to Sing Sing Sing, or the intro to or the when I didn't have a double bass, but I kind of faked it. That center middle part in one, I threw that in there, or a little jazz time, or maybe just straight punk smash things. That's the only way that I ever could feel good about doing a drum solo. I couldn't, for some reason, I just like, yeah, I can show off technique, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not as fun as guitar solos. I mean, drum solos are cool, but it's got there's a right way and a wrong way that it can be put together where it can be very boring.
I
For both.
remember a friend of mine telling me when he went to go see some band, maybe it was Primus, I don't know, but when the drum solo started, he said he turned around to his girlfriend and two friends that he went to, and he said, "Okay, time to go to the bathroom," you know. And I guess, and I was just like, "Oh, nice, yeah,
Yeah.
disrespect the drummer."
As usual, right? Because we're stuck in the back. Nobody knows what we look like. No respect, no respect. So, hey, so Anthony, let's again, I'm fascinated to talk to you about also, obviously the podcast, and obviously, one of the big things that you talk about on the podcast, and the guests you have on, and obviously, as you mentioned, discussions about the service industry, bartending, and so forth. So, how did you get into bartending? Was that just kind of a did you did you like go to school, or did you kind of was like OTJ and just kind of evolved, or yeah, tell me this.
I decided to be a bartender because I saw an ad for a bartending school on TV, and when I got there, they said they had job placement assistants. They said, we're going to teach you maybe 100 drinks, but you'll probably remember only 10 when you leave. And I accepted that. But the funny thing about that, when I left the bartending school, they did have job placement assistants. They sent me to this one place that said they needed a bartender. I went in, I did the interview, and then all of a sudden the guy says, "Well, I think what we're looking for here is somebody with more experience."
Mm.
And then I looked him dead in the eye and I said, "Then why did you call the bartending academy?" And because you don't have experience when you leave school.
Right. Yeah.
That's with everything.
Yeah.
Um, and eventually, uh, I did end up finding a job doing banquet bartending. Did that for a little while. Not very interesting, just because it was only bartend for 3 or 4 hours,
Hmm.
and cleanup took longer.
Right.
But eventually, I did get behind a real bar, and I was a bartender for about 8 years. And I used it mostly because I'm actually starting to find out a lot recently that a lot of bartenders are introverts, and I didn't know that back at that time. But I'm a bit of an introvert, and so I decided to use that as an opportunity to learn how to be in front of people, and learn how to speak and be friendly. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much how I got started in the bartending service.
That's interesting. You figure, yeah, bartenders, well, I guess it depends on the bar, right? You know, yeah, that is really interesting. I would have never known, never thought of that, is that most bartenders are introverts. And yeah, you're right. It's almost like taking a Toastmasters class, and because it forces you to have to talk to people. And I mean,
Yeah.
if people say I hate dealing with customers, but then they keep working customer service jobs, it's like, well, then why do you keep doing it? So yeah,
I
so
mean,
Sean in the
I
chat,
met a
he
lot.
agrees. Yeah, he goes, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that either. Yeah, so that's interesting tidbit.
I mean, a lot of bartenders there. I mean, I'm not saying all bartenders are introverts, but a lot that I've met since I started doing the podcast, a lot of people refer to themselves as an introverted type of person. But when, like in my case, when I got behind the bar, it's like, oh, say the director said action, and then I go into a character, and I start telling jokes, I start smiling, yeah, and but as soon as the last person leaves the bar, lock the door, turn off the open sign, back to.
Do you feel at the end of the night, or maybe initially when it was like that, did you feel like it was such a like an energy drain at that end of the night that you had to go, that you were switching it off? It's almost like performing, right? And that's kind of why I do a
Yeah,
Thursday night happy hour show. Uh, that was like we talked earlier, was the pitfalls of doing a live podcast. We both do mainly is our bread and butter is the audio format. And I've
Mm.
always wanted to do live and kind of balance out both video and audio, YouTube, grow out YouTube, etc. And I've always struggled early on. And that's why I can't learn to not touch the stove, the hot stove, because I keep wanting to come back to. Obviously, that's why we're doing the live tonight. Is But that's where my Thursday night happy hour show started. Was like I was missing performing, right? I was missing. That
Mhm.
was what I was missing as a drummer is per, put performing or doing a thing and talking and so forth. And so that's yeah. But same thing. You put on a persona. And I find it interesting because I think sometimes like I've got a day job. It's an office job, and I think
Mhm.
if anyone had any some people know I do this, and it's like, look, this is should be no different if you were going to see me. If you knew I was playing in a rock band, cover band locally, there should be no difference. I'm performing at
Yeah.
a thing. I'm not doing anything illegal, and as long as so that's how I always looked at it. It's like it's a persona, like acting, right? Does
Mhm.
actors really act like that? No, they are acting. So actors, musicians, and yeah, some musicians do live that lifestyle, but
Yeah.
not all of them.
Well, I didn't think of it that way, missing performing, because when I first moved out here to Texas 12 years ago, I left a lot of friends behind. I wasn't playing music anymore. I wasn't, I was just work, 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 work. And uh, how Hey Bartender podcast came around, because uh, I'd been listening to Kevin Smith's podcast for a really long time.
Okay.
And there a long time ago, I sat back and thought, if I started a podcast, what would it be about? And then I started thinking, there's already too many podcasts about the Beatles. There's already too many podcasts about Star Trek. How long can you do a podcast about Firefly? It was only 13 episodes. Uh, you know, So I was throwing ideas around constantly, but then all of a sudden I used to work in wind energy,
Mm,
and I'm up tower, and I'm telling these bartending stories to my partner or partners, as the case may be, and they're like paying attention. They're not just humoring me and laughing. They really wanted to listen to the story. I get caught up in something, then they're like, now finish that story. What were you saying about that 21-year-old? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, a podcast about bartending stories. And I thought it there, and then so I started looking up other bartending podcasts,
mm,
and most of them were telling, let's say, the origin tale of
mm,
Yukon Jack,
right.
or uh, if you mix this with this, you get a really interesting buzz or something like that. And they weren't talking about the service industry in general, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to try that. And uh, 260 something episodes later, uh, I'm doing okay with it. But
Mm,
I think you're right. I did kind of miss talking to people, friends, people that have stories like mine.
right.
And that's when I started inviting guests on and stuff like that. Because at first it was just me,
Right.
but I started inviting guests on, and then we start sharing stories. Because I like to think of Hey Bartender podcast as, if you've ever worked in the service industry, uh, a lot of the times you'll go to like Denny's or Sherry's or something like that after shift and sit around a table eating breakfast at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and talk about what happened that night, or just regular BSing. And that's kind of the atmosphere that I try to keep the show.
Yeah.
And because we're just swapping stories is all, and
No,
try
that's
to promote them, of course, at the
right.
same time.
Because that's an excellent. Because people love to hear the stories, right? There's a good storyteller, or I mean, hell, listen. I mean, look at the as much as the true crime genre has
Oh,
blown up because it's a story, or we're going to tell you about this story about this crime, and there's a you know yeah, I totally understand the starting out part where you have to either beg, borrow, friends or people or try to do it solo. And you're like me, right? And I have a little bit sometimes the gel. I don't want to say jealous, but like, man, there's others that are doing their things to as a with other people or another, at least another person. I'm like, man, I don't have it, and that's some of it where some of the live shows I've done. There's a local distributor here that they came on, they wanted to promote some stuff, and I'm like, all right, whatever. And then the president came on, and we were just kind of people could see that there was a banter going on. There's some kind of, and that's some of those things you miss in that kind of when you're by yourself. Like I said, as you know, it's hard to keep that. Like your recent episode, I'm sure that was kind of tough. Is it was a solo, with a solo episode, you've got to control what you want to talk about without kind of going off on a tangent.
Oh, well, you have to control yourself of what you're talking about. I mean, when not all these people, I'm going to break it down a little bit more modestly. Sorry. When some people started approaching me to be on the show, for example, you and I were talking about it before you hit record.
There's Roxanne.
Roxanne Rum. They approached me one day and said, "Hey, can we come on your show and talk about our product because we're about to launch?" And I said, "Absolutely." And then all of a sudden, I get free stuff. Cool, and when people started approaching me to come on the show to talk about their product, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is fun." And some of the stories that I get from people that are just upstarting their own business, it's encouraging. It's what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring.
Yeah.
Because like there was one guest I had on my show a while back. She was just working at the bar that she was working at, and all of a sudden one day her boss turned around and said, "I feel like doing something else. You want the bar?" And sold it to her.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, that is awesome. Please come on my show and talk about that.
And it's and yeah, so the people you have on or the businesses, I think that's an interesting part is that, it's, I love talking with distillers or company brands or rum brands that come on that are mom and pop, right? Because everyone is chipping away between Bacardi and Captain Morgan. 50% of the rum market is those two companies. And then everyone else fights over the rest of the other 50%. And, just kind of talking to them, especially, when I started, it was just before lockdown happened. So I didn't start because of the pandemic, and then going through, and then after we got through it, and especially here in Florida, it was we definitely were an opportunity where we were quite a bit open than most states. And just talking to these companies were like, how did you make it through? It's great to hear that of course, a lot of them were like, hey, we just started a company in 2019 and then the pandemic happened. And it's like, God, that talk about timing, talk about all these things you go through. And it's like, it's great to see that you made it through it. You have your passion, your dream to kind of keep moving forward. And I'm sure it was very tough, very nerve wracking, but like I said, so, all right. So Sean, yeah, all right, well, I'll catch you later, Sean. So yeah, so Sean just said, got to run to, he's got to watch another live here. But he said, I'll definitely rewatch. Just subbed Hey Bartender podcast. So there you go. So you got a new listener there. So thanks,
you,
Sean. Yeah. So same thing. It's love talking. So most of these companies are local, or is it kind of just broad all over?
No, anybody that wants to promote their stuff and they hear about my podcast, I've had whiskey, rye, rum, vodka companies come on the show. It's been a lot of fun. Just usually I used to set out a stipulation that if I'm going to talk to one of your ambassadors, I want them to have worked in the service industry.
Okay.
But I've been a little bit lax on that lately, just because the distilling part of it. I've talked to some distillers, and that's really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But like the ambassador for vodka that I had on my show, he was a all-around travel bartender. He got hired to do big events, things like Cannes Film Festival and
Wow.
other stuff. And so I beat the crap out of him for some celebrity stories because I'm a complete slut for those stories, you know.
So yeah, those
But
that worked in the industry that become right, because they can actually, that's why they can speak it, or ones that have been behind the bar. And I've had a couple on that. Again, if you ever want me to, make your connection, if somebody you see that, let me know and I'll make the introduction. Is like Ian Burrell, who's known as the global rum ambassador. Now I know, ambassadors is a broadly used term, but he's been recognized in brand and so forth. But his story was, he came on, talked the story. He was in England, and he's a Jamaican guy living in England, and so he knew about rum, obviously the right fit, because obviously all those things go together, and again, he knows his product. He actually owns also a portion of Equiano rum, and but he started behind the bar, so then he can educate, and he can talk about it. And same thing with Mitch from, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but from Black Tot Rum. He was also a bartender in the UK and some pretty big name places in. So yeah, it's always interesting because then they know as far as selling the product. So Anthony, we need to get you to become a brand ambassador for somebody. So all right, so whoever's listening to this, so he can talk, he can speak, he's got the knowledge behind the bar, he knows what products are and what they are. So, but that's kind of really cool. So yeah,
yeah, that
so
would be
what?
fun.
So how far did you? So how far? So what are we talking about? Almost 2019. Did you start?
Yeah, it's been about 5, maybe 6 years. So, um,
Okay.
not consistent.
Yeah.
Because I took some time off here and there,
Right.
but um, yeah, it's been about 5 or 6 years I've been doing this show, and I've got to meet some pretty incredible people. I mean, there's this like core group of bartenders in New York, and uh, I guess they take up a park somewhere in Hell's Kitchen and bring out the Bluetooth speaker and sit and listen to Hey Bartender podcast in the park, and
Oh, that's cool.
I think that's cool as hell.
Oh yeah.
And uh, you if I don't say Boogie's name, he'll probably get pissed. But he was on the show. But one time, my favorite moment so far, I mean, I got tons of favorite moments with the podcast. Um, I got an email from a girl on Facebook. She said that her uh, husband or boyfriend at the time was a huge fan of the podcast, and they were from England. And I'm like, my God, they're listening to me in England.
That's pretty cool.
And uh, she was wondering if I could give him a birthday shout out, or just do kind of like one of those, what are they, cameo things.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, hell, I'll do you one better, I'll say it during the show. And that would be awesome. And I did it, and I had him on the show a few weeks later, and because they were like, thank you so much, that meant so much to us. And I said, well, come on the show. And and he came on the show. He said that he was jumping around his house excited. He was a little drunk, but he's jumping around his house and excited. And I asked his wife for a reaction video, and she told me she couldn't do that because he was in his pants or in his underwear at the time. So I'm like, okay, yeah, please don't send me that.
So those are the best ones. That's going right to TikTok.
But I invited him on my show, and I got to know the huge differences between liquor laws in England compared to the United States, and I found that incredibly interesting. And I look at my where people are listening to Hey Bartender podcast, and I'm like, people listen to me in India, huh?
Yeah.
It actually floors me, and I'm hugely appreciative of it. But it's just funny.
It's who's your host? Who's your host with?
My host?
The podcast hosting company.
Oh, my studio.
Yeah, or who do you? I guess who?
Oh, who do I?
Yeah,
Who I
Podbean or
distribute?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I use I just blanked on it. Anchor.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm with Buzzsprout, and yeah, I hear a lot of people talk about Anchor. So, yeah, the analytics and tools, and yeah, it is really cool when you can see where people are listening, and you're right. It's like, how does somebody, like so I took the month of December off, and I was really worried about. I said, let me take a little break. I want to catch on some things, and this is the first time that I took a break. Well, here in Florida we had hurricanes, so I had went every week since January 2021 and up until October 22. It was the first time I actually had a gap in the podcast. So again, it sucked, but again, my job came first, and other things, priorities, and then finished up. Told everybody in the last episode that I was going to take a break for December, and I've been talking with some other folks about possibly working together to start like a network, with like-minded shows and so forth, and so that was the idea to kind of start, and then start of December, I just had this idea about doing a short, because I guess apparently in 2023 micro podcasts are like the thing, and I started a short form podcast while I was in the car driving to work, and my drive to work is like no more than 10 minutes. I'm that close to work. I'm on and off the highway, so I figured, all right, this is it. You're at this episode's gonna be 10 minutes or less, or it's free. Again, it was just like if you were carpooling with me, these are some of the things that I was, that I was thinking about, was wanted to discuss, right? So again, it's a solo show, but I'm discussing while I'm actually in the car. So this is authentic. And, but then after looking at some of the episodes, and now I'm putting one out every day, and again, just recording, very minimal editing, and then put it out. I think I started to kind of dilute my existing channel, because then it was like, all right, well, this isn't drums and this isn't rums, but I mean, it's me, but I'm not talking about either one of those two things. So I ended up backing out those episodes, or delisting them. I was like, all right, well, we'll keep it. We'll see how that experiment went. But it was interesting. I did zero promotion on that on any social media. But they were getting picked up and listened to in like South America and, and in other places. And I was like, how is this getting picked? Who was stumbling across this? Because it's underneath the Drums and Rums channel, but I'm not getting these same places on the Drums and Rums shows that have already been posted and so forth. So yeah, I'm always fascinated in how that all works and how the algorithms and things and people stumble across shows. And so like I said, social media, as and I know you're a big Instagram guy too, and I want to talk about that. Is you put together a lot of really good content. I really thought the state laws were interesting, because like a lot of people don't know, like you said, about the laws. That's why that was the roundabout way how, as you mentioned about the laws in England. This is how I'm getting back to what you said there about this.
I get you. Yeah.
So
I'd heard, that only happened because I had heard that there are a lot of strange laws out there. You hear about certain things. There are certain adult positions you can't get into. I don't know how dirty I can get on this show. Sorry.
Go for it. Go for it.
There are certain like sexual positions you can't get into in certain states that are considered illegal. I think there's even a law in Oregon where oral sex is illegal. But that's been, long forgotten about.
Right.
Thank God. But I started wondering if there were strange liquor laws out there, and so that's when I started doing the research, and that helped boost me on TikTok, because basically my TikTok and my Instagram page are virtually the same. But that helped boost my TikTok because, I'd hashtag the state that I did that day. And then, everybody wants to know about that because they live in that state, or they follow that particular state.
Right. Right. That's
so I did get some backlash a little bit from it because, some people, that's not true. They do this, that. And I was like, I just did, researched it on the internet.
Yeah. It's on the internet. It's true. So shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blame Google. Blame Wikipedia. I trust everything in Wikipedia, even though we all can edit Wikipedia ourselves. No, that you know, as you know, right, being a content creator more than just, you know, podcast is, and you know, there's some work into it, you know, and again, I've been,
There's a lot of work.
yeah, you know, and it's been, again, especially when you're, you know, a solo, guy doing this is, you know, I've been looking a little bit more into, you know, people that are creating user generated content and actually getting paid for it and things like that, you know, like everybody, you eventually start out learning a lot of these different things, skill sets that have acquired over the last 3 years, editing and audio and this and speaking and, you know, all those things.
Mm.
And it's kind of an interesting, you know, how it all comes about. But that's something that I haven't had. My problem is, again, idea goes, you know, comes in, and then it's like, you know, I've got to work on more planned and, you know, content for, you know, IG or even uh any of the video version stuff, right? So, but yeah, but no, I mean, you're killing it. So I think it's freaking hilarious there. So
Uh,
keep it up.
it's just so much work because I mean, I'll during the day I'll be driving around, listen, you know, and I'll say listening to Conan O'Brien's podcast, and I sit there and go, you know, I sit there and I beat myself up, you know, if I skip a week, 2 weeks, I beat myself up. Going, come on, if you want to see this podcast successful, you got to keep on it, keep on it, and then I listen to Conan. I'm like, how does he do it? But then all of a sudden, I listen to the end of the show. Conan O'Brien, starring Conan O'Brien, assisted by Sona Mosefsian, produced by this guy. You know,
Right.
talent produced by this guy. Like, he's got help.
Yeah.
I have to do the editing. I have to just, you know,
all the
do
social media.
Yeah. So I don't beat myself up too much because there are just times where you're just tired. You know, you got to take a break for a minute.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this one thing. I hadn't been running the podcast for very long, and I was doing this safety safety meeting in South Carolina, and they brought in a guy who talks a lot about workplace safety stuff, and he has his own podcast and stuff like that. But when he started talking about the podcast, he said, how many people here know what a podcast is? Maybe 3 people out of 40 raised their hands, and I raised my hand and I said, I have one. And then he turns and looks at me and goes, you were the least interesting person in this room until you said that. But this guy was hilarious because he started off his speech. He knew how to really grab the audience by the balls, because he started off by saying, never eat a laxative and a sleeping pill at the same time. That got our attention almost immediately. But when he took me aside for a few minutes and he said, I'll give you a piece of advice. Whatever you do, just keep doing it. Eventually people will come to you.
Right.
And that was incredibly encouraging. And I totally appreciate that guy to this day for, you know, giving me that little bit of knowledge,
reassurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you're I know, you know, those that want to start it out or how to get into it, you know, always people ask me, it's like, how do you do a pod? I'm like, basically you hit record and record yourself, and you have a company, you know,
too.
you get yourself a hosting company, you put your stuff up, and that's pretty much it, you know. And people are very amazed by it. It's like, yeah, you know, again, the problem is people know Joe Rogan, and that's where everyone's bar is, right? And it's like, look, not everyone is Joe Rogan. Nobody will be Joe Rogan. There's other that are very successful and can, you know, but Joe Rogan also was, you know, known before podcasting, and you know, UFC, and he was an actor, and you know, and all the comedian and all these things. So, but you're right, and I think I assume it's still the stat for, you know, for those that are listening, is most podcasts that people start out don't make it past, I think, like the 7th episode.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, only 7, you know, because they figure out, like, this is actually hard.
Yeah, there are literally millions of podcasts out there, but they don't make it very far because they ran out of ideas before episode 20, let's say. And I think bringing guests onto the show ended up giving my show longevity, because I would have run out of bartending stories a long time ago. And I'm not here to teach. I'm here to entertain.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. Because if I didn't, all of a sudden say, you know what, I think I want to bring guests on the show. I don't. I think I probably would have stopped years ago. But
Right.
it's been fun to get to meet all these people, and usually people are like, I've never heard of your show, but hell yeah, I'll be on it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny is that in most that don't it's like, no, look, if I'm asking you, I think what you've got is either informative or entertaining, and I want to talk to you, right? And if,
Right.
and again, if I think, that, and again, like your audience, if you've got somebody on, obviously, if they like you, that it's like one of those. If I'm a friend of yours, whatever that analogy is, friend of mine is friend is yours kind of thing, and yeah, I'm that same boat, right? It's that I always had started out and wanted to talk to folks, and but again, I'm sure the same way. We have evolved over our journey in our podcasting, world. Is I started out with an idea and thought how things were, and then changed, and again, you kind of keep adjusting, but be consistent, because that's why I worried about taking a full month off and then throwing a whole bunch of other stuff in there that I'm like, did I hurt myself a bit? Do I have to kind of rebuild? And I was actually going to take a little break during the summer of last year when I hit my 100th episode. But I had a great rum guest. Went up to Georgia to interview the owner of this distillery in Georgia, and it got a lot of traction. Again, I do social media to promote through it also, and it got a lot of traction. I was like, well, shit, I don't want to stop now because I've got a little bit of a little buzz or groundswell, and that. So I kept pushing through it, and like I said, it's probably the biggest thing is being planning and being organized to kind of make it easier with guests and prepping and all that.
Yeah. I last summer, my whole family went on vacation together, and so I sat back and thought, okay, I'm going to be gone 2 weekends. I need to get at least 3 shows in the can before I leave. And I worked hard, calling people, messaging people, please be on my show. And then I got all 3 of those done. And then I thought, okay, I can enjoy my vacation. All I have to do is take out my cell phone, hit post, all good to go. But when Christmas came around, I was like, time to take a break.
Yeah.
And because I've done lots of Christmas episodes and New Year's episodes, it's okay. It's one of those things like another podcaster, Vicky Magar. She does Peace, Toast, and Jam. Is her name of her podcast. You got to give yourself permission to take a break. So that was me saying, okay, time to sit back, relax for a little while. And so I can come back fresh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's important to get a little bit of, like we're talking about the drums, right? You take a little break from it, and then you're like ready to kind of explore it and go all into it, because you just need that mental, the break, the routine, because it becomes a grind, and it becomes, then you feel like it's a burden, and it's a kind of, now you're chained to it, and at least that's how sometimes I've gone through, and I feel is like that. And so give us a crazy bar story here.
Oh God. Let's see. Well, the favorite, I have 2 that I like talking about a lot of the times. Is in the bar, there were these 2 guys in one of the bars I worked. There were these 2 guys that were regular blue collar guys, worked out outdoors, and reasonably friendly, but not really. They thought they were smart asses and stuff like that. And they were actually after my coworker, my coworker Shannon. She and I bartended at the same time on busy nights, but they were hitting on her constantly. And whenever they came in, they said, "Oh, Anthony's here. Well, I guess I'll just stick around for a couple." But that happened constantly. I have nothing against my friend Shannon. She and I are still friends to this day. But the one thing that Shannon brings up all the time is I'm kind of a smart mouth every once in a while. And sometimes things just pop out of my head. It's nothing's original. I steal from comedians. I steal from TV shows. But one time, one of those guys, the blue collar worker guys, he stands up and he goes, "Anthony, do you want to step outside?" And I looked him right in the eye and I said, "No, thanks. I don't need a blowjob right now." And that froze him up. Everybody's laughing, sitting around laughing at him. And that I felt pretty good about myself for saying that diffused everything that quickly. But the early on in my career, you think I've had workers that accidentally started on a bad night, or their first week ended up having a bad night in it, where a fight broke out or something like that. And I hadn't been bartending for very long, and then all of a sudden these guys start to get into a fight. Shirts come off, fist goes up, and I see I'm new to bartending at this time, so I didn't know what the proper procedure was. But I see Shannon come out from behind the bar to try to break it up. I grab her, throw her aside, and then I get between the two guys, pull one off the other. And once we got, everybody outside, or, we had everything sorted back out, I go back behind the bar. I got this smile on my face, and I turn and look at my friend Shannon. And I said, "What the hell were you think you're doing? You got kids to go home to. You're jumping out in the middle of a fight like that." When then she explained to me, because she had been a bartender for a lot longer than I had, she explained to me that women can actually diffuse bar fights faster than men. And I did find that out a lot later, because there was a bar fight that started happening. Some guys had a disagreement on a pool shot.
Right.
And they started fighting. I grabbed one guy, pulled him off, and then I stared the other guy, who was about twice my size. I stared him down, and I thought, I'm no longer a bartender. I have just become a contender. But luckily for me, about 5 seconds after that, his face went from "I'm going to kill" to "I just fucked up." And he had to go to jail that night for
Wow.
for a bar fight and
assault,
stuff
right,
like
yeah.
that. But there's, I can't really say anything absolutely, that spun my head around. Crazy things happen.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting how things in a bar can go from "Hi, everybody's happy, we're full of energy," to psycho in no time flat.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's an interesting. I would have never thought about that which said there about female bartenders diffusing. Because most of the time, probably I don't know the statistics, but I would assume like 99% of the bar fights are usually between two guys. The women do get into fights, yes. And you're right, is probably again a very high percentage that once a woman, nobody wants to be the one who accidentally hit a woman, not because on purpose, but because they got in the middle of something, and then you still look. At the end of the day, they may have shouldn't have been in that place. Some would feel, but look, you're still going to feel bad if you accidentally hit a woman, because that's I guess coyote ugly, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that women is a guarantee. If you throw a woman in between a fight, that they'll diffuse it immediately. I have met a number of servers, a number of bartenders who are female, who had to go home with a shiner, or they had a cut on them because something flew through the air or something like that. They can get hurt, but there are a lot of guys that just all of a sudden, see a woman standing there, and then all of a sudden, crap. Yeah.
Oh, so funny. It's very cool. All right, so Anthony, are you ready for the rapid fire segment here?
I'll do my best.
All right, so here we go. So we're gonna queue up this, and we're gonna go through our rapid fire segment, and we're gonna give you the in 4 beats, because you are a drummer here. So. All right, in 4 beats or less. So here we go. We're going to come back here, and then we're going to cue this up here. So The way this works is in 4 beats or less, don't overthink these questions. The first thing that comes to mind, answer the questions. And then again, we're just having fun here. All right. So in 4 beats or less, our first question here is all the drummers get this question. So again, I'm sure you know what it is because you listen to the podcast. In 4 beats or less, who's on your Mount Rushmore of drummers?
Keith Moon,
All right.
Ringo Starr, Lars Ulrich, Gene Krupa.
Okay, there you go. All right, okay. I've had some different answers, interesting answers. I've had some ask, it's my Mount Rushmore, so I can put however many I want. So there's no limit. I never said there was a limit, but so it's interesting. It's always interesting. You said there's some different names that get thrown in there from time to time, and there's some that are obviously very similar. All right, so in 4 beats or less, okay, best concert you've been to.
Billy Joel, Elton John duets tour.
Oh wow, I know a lot of people talk about that one. Yeah, two great piano players, and to see two legends, right?
Yeah. For the tour, specific tour I went on, I think it was probably the last tour that Liberty DeVito did with Billy Joel.
Okay.
But Elton John brought back his original drummer.
Oh wow.
For that tour, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Billy Joel. I'm more of a fan of Billy Joel than I am Elton John, but I developed. You ever have that moment where after you see somebody live, you appreciate them more than you did before?
Yeah, and because
that was kind of me and Elton John.
Because you can be very removed from it, and then until you see the performance, like wow, okay, this guy, gal, can really rock and put on a good show. So you respect that they're putting on a show rather than whatever else you may see. So okay, all right,
and plus Billy Joel playing Elton John songs, Elton John playing Billy Joel songs, or them duetting each other's songs. It was incredible.
That's it. Last night when I had Pete McLaughlin on from Dad's Unfiltered podcast and also drummer, he hit me with that question. He goes, "So have you ever heard a song played that was like the band totally changed the way that it was sound?" And I guess what he meant was like if let's say the Metallica. So say if I went to see Metallica and I was expecting to hear Enter Sandman and they played Enter Sandman like in a ska version, right? Would I have been pissed off about it? Whatever, and I said, I can't remember ever. I don't recall that happening, or at least that's ever stuck in my mind. But I do love it when I hear a song, and most of the time it's probably a cover band or here in Florida, a bar band or something, and they play in a different style. Like I've heard there's a musician here in West Palm, and they're mostly like very Florida beachy, vibey reggae, and they did a cover of Midnight Rider in very much like kind of a reggae kind of vibe. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, So, but that's cool. Seeing obviously both two the piano players playing each other's stuff. Yeah.
An example of that I would like to bring up, Metallica's Saint Anger album, not well liked even by me. The version of All Within My Hands they did for the S&M 2 compared to the version that was on the Saint Anger album itself, I loved it when they played it with the orchestra. I hated it when it was on the Saint Anger album. But it's an incredible song. But they've played the acoustic version of it now, and the Saint Anger, that album, I want to slap Bob Rock sometimes. But
that's when they had enough. All right, so in 4 beats or less, question number 3, as a bartender here, what drink do you hate making?
Anything blended. Honestly, one of my most popular, most viewed TikTok video was this girl that came in for a 21 run, and she asked for a strawberry daiquiri. And I mentioned that little does this girl realize I hate making blended drinks, but it's her 21st birthday, so why not? I'll make it. And she comes back, any blended drink, you're not going to taste the alcohol. The people don't know that. And she comes back up to the bar and says, "Is there any alcohol in this?" And I said, "Yeah, a shot of rum, strawberry mix." And she goes, "Well, when I make it at home, I can taste the alcohol." And in my head, I'm going, because I didn't use half the bottle.
Yeah, right.
And but yeah, because anything that's blended, just because the blender's loud, you have to clean it after every time
Yep.
you use it. And then somebody walks off with this blended drink across the bar, and then another person looks up and says, "Ooh, that looks refreshing.
Yeah.
I think I'll have one too." And then you got to make another one. Then you got a loud blender, and then you
Yep.
got to clean it. Yeah, yeah.
I posted something very similar like that on IG, or I don't know, remember wherever it was, again, it was about making daiquiris. And, so I go into a bar and I said, "Hey, can I have a daiquiri?" "Oh, we don't have a blender, or the blender's broke," right? I was like, "No."
Well,
I said,
blender's broken.
I was like, "Yeah, because I don't want to make I said, "No." I said, "I didn't ask for a frozen daiquiri. I asked for a daiquiri." "Well, what's that?" I'm like, "Okay, apparently you haven't actually been trained in bartending." And so, yeah, that's always a joke, because when you say people think daiquiri, that immediately they're always thinking frozen daiquiri, and it's like, no, 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 no. It's actually one of the hardest drinks to make because it's super simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's funny. And I'm in the same way too, right? Because my wife likes a blended strawberry daiquiri, and we're at home, and I'm like, "Oh, man, I got to clean the blender. I got to do this." Even at home, I hate doing it, right? So I can understand why the frozen ones in this supermarket, you just kind of already frozen. So all right, so question number 4 here, last one here, in 4 beats or less. Again, it's another kind of bartender thing. I think I asked Joel Lakovich this question here, the cocktail scientist, our good friend from Roxanne Rums. So big shout out for them. What's the one tool behind the bar you can't be without?
Oh, uh, I'd have to probably go with the paddle bottle opener, because that can be pretty much used for anything. I mean, get the plastic off the top of a bottle
Yeah,
so you can
yeah.
get the cork off, or open the beer bottles, slap somebody's hand.
I think he may have said something very similar. Actually, it was, yeah, because that's probably, yeah, the one thing is when you're trying to speed open those bottles up there, and
I don't have one right away, but but yeah, I think that's my final answer there. Yeah.
right. All right. Well, very good. So I appreciate you there for coming on here and then playing the in 4 beats or less as a drummer here. So you've now have joined so for the pain and suffering you went through there. So there's your shirt there, Anthony. There is, you've joined
Right
the
on.
Drums and Rums alums now, as I called it there. So there's your shirt. We'll get that out to you. I'll send it to you and get your address here afterwards. And so yeah, now it's a little bit of have fun, and just get a little questions. And I don't know if that maybe I should move it up front to make it a little bit more icebreaker-ish, but I don't know. It's some of the things, again, we're trying to ask it may lead into other things. So Greg's still in the chat. Thanks, Greg, for hanging in there. So he had a question there, or he says, "That's why I bought a NutriBullet, so I can make blended drinks without a lot of cleanup." Okay.
Good idea.
Not a bad idea. Right. So again, I think most of them are all battery operated, or you can charge them up and so forth. So Anthony, as we wrap up here, so in closing, so all right, so here's your shameless plug segment here. What do you want to promote, plug? And I know you got I think something up in the back and you're right above your head there. I'm sure you want to mention too. So here you go. Here's your opportunity for shameless plugs.
Okay, shameless plugs. Hey Bartender Podcast can be followed on any of the social medias: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. All of them are at Hey Bartender Podcast. Listen to Hey Bartender Podcast. It's available on anywhere where you can download your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. You can even ask Alexa, play Hey Bartender Podcast. She'll do it. Also, if you are looking for a good deal, or you're looking for unique liquors that you might not have heard of, head over to cwspirits.com. And when you're checking out, use promo code HEY5, HEY5, and you get 5% off your entire order.
All right. We will definitely have checked out. Right, Greg, we're going to check out that website there. So Greg's a rum guy, so he's going to be checking out and see if he's getting some good deals on scoring some bottles there. So, all right. No,
real quick.
Yeah.
Here's one from Humboldt Distillery I got when I had them on my show. It's organic spiced rum that they made. I got them on my show originally because of their vodka. Humboldt Distillery they have a hemp infused vodka.
Oh wow!
But their whole thing is to keep it organic. And so when they sent me some samples, they also sent me a sample of their distilled spiced rum, 80 proof, and truthfully, I'm not a very good drinker, so this cleared my sinuses really well. But it's good stuff.
It's very rare to see a 80 proof spiced, again, because there's a whole big discussion about the definition of rum, and spiced is, it's a flavored rum. And then even most Captain's, there's a local company here in South Florida. They came out with an 80 proof spiced rum as well. And I told them, I was like, look, you should be going after Captain Morgan. Captain Morgan doesn't make an 80 proof, and they do have a higher proof rums, I know, but like their base product that's everywhere. I said, that's not even 80 proof. I think it's 70. I said, so that's the stuff you should be like hammering people that you can go find the black strap stuff or something, the 100 proof Captain Morgan, but it's not like you're going to get it when you go to a bar and order it. So
it's 70 proof.
Yeah. So it's definitely I don't know. It's like you're in the same boat, right? You circle around, you've through the podcast, learned a lot of things, talking to different people, and, and kind of sharing different knowledge that people may not be aware of, or guidance and so forth. I don't know. I mean, if anyone's ever reached out to like for consulting even too, right? Is because, obviously you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of that stuff.
Oh, one more thing I'd like to pitch. Yeah. If any of your followers, listeners have been in the service industry, would like to be a guest on Hey Bartender podcast, all you have to do is email me, heybartenderpodcast@gmail.com. We'll talk about it, and we'll get a chance to get you on the show. I'd love to have as many guests, even musical guests. If you want your song promoted on the show, I'll even do that.
There you go. All right. So Anthony, we've got a lot of similarities there. So I definitely think there's probably some future synergies here. And like I said, if there's any guests that you see that may have been interesting, I'll definitely make the introduction. And that's a great way. Again, we're always as Anthony talked about, we're always trying to line up the schedule and say, please, okay, I don't want to throw a goose egg out there this week. I need to get something to talk about or somebody to talk about, and so forth.
Right.
For sure. So
right.
Yeah, so no, I appreciate you coming on, Anthony. I think it was a lot of very cool stuff.
This has been a blast.
Yeah, I mean, I know we could definitely chat a lot longer. So we'll definitely, like I said, we got to have to do something else. Maybe we try to do some live streams or again, maybe come back on the happy hour and kind of do some stuff there and make some drinks. Because I started up a part of the happy hour as a cocktail camera. I've got another camera that's aiming down on the bar here, and then kind of the show making drinks, and so maybe we can definitely do that. But yeah, we'll let's keep in touch and collab some stuff. And so I'd like to thank Anthony for coming on the podcast, talking about drums, podcasting, bartending, all sorts of great stuff. A great conversation tonight. And check out the Drums and Rums podcast and give it a like, follow. Make sure you give it a 5-star review, 5 stars, rate it for 5 stars, give it a review. And as Anthony says, those things are really important. People think we're just a bunch of full of bullshit, but the ratings and the reviews does make a difference, because that's what advertisers, that's what people look at to say, hey, is this a podcast that I want to check out? So if you're listening, just go ahead and down, especially on the Apple podcast, scroll down, click 5 stars, type in something. It is helpful. So we got a lot of other great episodes out there. So follow all that stuff. Follow the social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Trying to grow that to get to trying to get to the magical 1,000 numbers. And visit our website, drumsandrums.com. And actually, so heybartender.com, correct?
Heybartenderpodcast.com.
There you go. All right, so I want to make sure I get it right. So, but so that's all. I appreciate Anthony for coming on there. So I think hopefully everybody has a great day, night, evening, whatever time of the day it is you're listening to this. And this is Paul with the Backbeats Meet Spirits. Thanks all.